Greetings from the University of Science and Technology of Southern Philippines. A pleasant good afternoon to all who are here virtually tuning in this lecture series of the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. I am personally thankful to the President of PUP, Dr. Manuel Bong Muhi, for inviting me again in this lecture series of the university. This afternoon, I will be talking about the techniques of publishing in ISI and Scopus Index Journal. I am very happy that I can present to you some of my experiences and my skills in publishing in ISI and Scopus Index Journal, particularly that in our university, particularly in USTP Club area, we want that our undergraduate student thesis and project studies should be published in ISI and Scopus Index Journal. And that is one of the best practices in our campus here in USTP Club area. And so therefore this afternoon, we will be talking about again the techniques of publishing in ISI and Scopus Index Journal. I am Dr. Renato O. Araso, a holder of the Professorial Chair Award of PUP, a university professor in our university, and currently the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. So here we go. We will be discussing about the techniques of publishing in ISI and Scopus Index journals. I hope that you will have an idea on how you are going to do this. Many maybe have already some ideas on how publishing should be done, but like me, when there are opportunities, then I will be listening to some of the lectures, like seminars or trainings, because every day we are learning, and that according to my teacher before, repetition is the best so that you can learn a lot, and that everything that you learn will be put into practice. So, the outline of my presentation, I'll be discussing on how to write an effective title of manuscript for publication, writing searchable and specific keywords, and then writing the introduction that is substantive, and of course sound materials and methods, writing the results and discussion, writing a conclusion and abstract, and then completing the package and correspondence. These are the things that should be written and should be done by a researcher so that a paper out of the research engagement and research investigation in the laboratory or in the field shall be published in ISI or Scopus Index Journal. So we'll be discussing each of this topic in this afternoon. So first, this is the thing that I usually let my students look at before the start of their thesis. That if you wanted that you can contribute to the value of knowledge in your field, then you need to publish your paper. And that publishing a paper is like going into a certain direction where there are a lot of barriers. And you need to be ready because there are some uh, activities that might not give you the positive decision so that your paper will be published. So again, based on the outline, this is the structure of research publication. We have search and find, then we need to tell a story, and then we need to provide context of our study. Of course, search and find, this is where we can find in the internet the activities that has been done or the publication that you once published in the internet. So this includes the title, meaning to say it should be that the title is searchable and can easily be found if somebody is browsing in the internet, including the abstract and the keywords of your research work. And of course, in the next the introduction, the methods, the results, and discussion, this is where you can tell a story as to what your work is really all about. In the introduction, you will be telling on the problem, how you are going to solve the problem, what are the ways wherein you can bridge the knowledge gap, or you can put some answers to the knowledge gap that is occurring in a certain area, and then you can make your own methods, and then you can simply tell a story, what is the result and the interpretation of the result of your study. And of course, you will provide context when you make some conclusion as to what you have achieved in your study, and then some acknowledgement, references, and if there are supporting materials, then you can also provide supporting materials. So, again, I'll be talking about the parts of the article when you want to publish your paper. And the first one is writing an adequate manuscript title. So, in writing the manuscript title, all of us, most probably who are listening now, are academicians and researchers. But in a way, maybe when I give you some of this, tips or ideas on how to write the title, this might add or might resolve, and you can like revise the title of your study if you have any before publication or submitting it to a journal for publication. So the title is it should be the one that contain the fewest possible words that adequately describe the content of the paper. Again, it should identify the main issue of the paper, or in my students, I always say main issue is the actor of your paper. So meaning to say, when if you are producing something, then you can say production. If you are developing something, then you can say development. So it will begin with the subject of the paper. If it is again development, then that's the beginning or the first three words of your paper. It should be accurate, unambiguous, specific, and complete, as short as possible. So it should not contain, rarely use abbreviations. So do not use abbreviations that only you or some of the people surrounding you understand that certain abbreviation. And of course, a title should attract the readers. Remember, readers are the potential authors who will cite your article when they will be publishing also their work. And even when they are going into investigative work and they are looking for something where they can really say that this is the method, for example, that they wanted to pursue because this is published somewhere else. So again, I would like to reemphasize that it should attract the reader's attention. It should contain fewest possible words, and then it adequately describe what your study is all about. Informative. There is a main issue or a main actor that is there, and there is no technical jargon. So these are some of the examples of the original title and revised title. For example, if you'll be saying action of antibiotics on bacteria, this is very general, and so therefore you need to revise this because it is very general. And it was found in that certain paper that it is about inhibition of the growth of the bacteria. So inhibition is the main actor, so therefore the title starts with the word inhibition. There's also a title like preliminary observation on the effects. It is being revised because the activity or the main actor of the study is about looking for the effects of a certain anti-corrosion material. So the third one is about publication, but it is in the inside the paper. It's about electrospinning. So therefore, the title should start with the word electrospinning. So how to prepare the title? You need to make a list of the most important keywords. This is what I told to my students that you close your eyes and make a list of the most important keywords. And then think of a title that contains these words that you have listed. And then the title could state or should state the conclusion of the paper. If you're producing, then you can say production. If you're developing again, then you can say development. You need to rethink of the title before submitting your paper to a journal. So title never contains abbreviation, as what it said, chemical formulas, proprietary names, or jargon. So be careful of the grammatical errors due to faulty word order. And as a general rule, as much as possible, avoid the use of the word using in the title. So you keep the title short, it should be concise, but it should be conclusive. And then remove all uninformative phrases such as a study on, the nature of, a research on, a preliminary study on. These words are not needed, and therefore you need to remove this in the title of your research article. So, for example, if there is like preliminary observation on the effects of salinity, then therefore the word preliminary observation is not necessary. So, therefore, it will the title should be effects of salinity on the benthic distribution within the sanctuary in North Sea. Okay, so that's the example. So this is uh, some of the study or a study wherein we are putting emphasis on what is the main actor of the study and what are the specific in the title of the study. So in here it's about bio oil production. So meaning to say this is the main actor of the study that that this work is producing bio oil, and the specific is it is being produced from dry sewage sludge through past pyrolysis. So this is the specific that this certain study of mine is producing bio oil that is convertible to biodiesel, and the raw material is dry sewage sludge, or shall we say sludge of fecal origin from the wastewater treatment facility. I studied this in USA, and it was found out that the waste of human being or those domestic wastewater sludge can be converted into bio oil with high potential in the biodiesel production. Another one is the main issue is about leaching of heavy metals from the residue of that certain biooil production from the domestic sewage sludge. We look into if there are heavy metals, where the heavy metals are deposited, and this is the main issue: leaching of heavy metals. And the specific is about the past pyrolysis residues produced from different particle size of sewage sludge. So again, what I am emphasizing here that if you are making the title of your research article as much as possible, you need to see to it that the first 3 or 4 words is the main issue of your current work or the main actor of your study. Okay, so that's what I am emphasizing. So common mistakes in making the title is with abbreviations or acronym. Sometimes it is all capital. As much as possible, the title of a study should not be all capital. It can be a title case or a sentence case to give way to some proper noun that should be capitalized, or for scientific name, for example, wherein the genus should have a capital first letter and all others are small letters. So the main actor is not found in the first 3 to 5 words. So supposedly the first 3 words should include, for example, development, evaluation, assessment, production, or mutual effect, or whatsoever. And also, there are titles that are too long, more than 20 words. As a general rule, as much as possible, the title should be less than 20 words. Next is writing searchable and specific keywords. So this is the words that we are going to put into our manuscript so that when there's somebody who will be searching in the internet, then if he hits this keyword, then your paper will be displayed in the like in the Google Scholar or in the Google Chrome or wherever it is being searched. Okay, so keywords in an electronic world, keywords determine whether your article is found or not. So if you really have a very good keyword that is searchable and very specific, then your work will be noticed and can be searched by researchers all over the world. So avoid making too general, like drug delivery, the mouse, for example, or disease, because these are too general term, meaning to say if you have this keyword, then millions of studies will be like given to a certain person who is searching in that certain area. Or if it is too narrow also, then nobody will ever search for it in the internet. So effective approach: look at the keywords of articles relevant to your manuscript. You can go to some articles, you can look at the articles that you are reading, and then play with these keywords and see whether they return relevant papers, or it might be that these certain keywords are also true to you, to your work. So therefore, you can use that keywords because you believe that these are uh, the keywords that are in mind of some people who are searching in the internet. So the keywords are the levels of the manuscript. They are used by indexing and abstracting services. Again, it should be specific and should only use established abbreviations if there are any. So there is example here that if this is the article title, and then there are some keywords that are being presented. Remember, or if you're going to like observe in the keywords are separated by semicolon because this is mostly guide to authors or instruction to authors really say that in your manuscript you need to separate keywords by a semicolon. There are only very few journals saying that keywords can be separated by a comma. So these are example of the title, the article title, and the keywords that are related to the title. So check the guide for authors for any specific guidance on keywords. So I have here an example of the keywords in the study that is published this year about uh, this is related to steel sewage sludge or bio oil into biodiesel, and some keywords is like bio oil upgrading, catalysis, fast pyrolysis. So these are the most important keywords that I imagine that if a certain researcher wanted to go to the internet, then most probably these are the words that he will be searching in the internet. So whatever keywords that you put into your Microsoft Word in your manuscript, that will also be reflected in an article once it is already published by the journal. So these are common mistakes in the making or in the writing of keywords. Wrong separator, as what I have said. Uh, there are some journals saying semicolon and some saying comma as a separator. So follow what is written in guide to authors or instruction to authors. Usually semicolon. So another mistake is the keywords are all capital, or it is being presented in a sentence and not as keywords, and too general or plural term and multiple concepts. So avoid, for example, and or of in your keywords. Sorry. So another mistake is most of the instruction to authors says that it should be alphabetized. So there are keywords that are not alphabetized, so therefore the editor and the reviewer will say that please alphabetize your keywords, or your keywords are too divergent from the title. Next is writing a substantive introduction. So in writing the substantive introduction, the introduction should provide a brief context to the reader. It should address the problem that is, for example, in an industry or a community is experiencing. You will be doing some experiments so that a problem will be addressed. And then you need to identify solutions of that certain problem that is already being done and some limitations that has not been done yet, and then what work you can do to achieve and to fill the gap of the limitation that is being experienced in solving the problem, and It should provide a certain perspective consistent with the nature of the journal. So, as much as possible, we need to write a unique introduction for every article that we are making. It is a no that we are going to reuse our introductions from one paper to the other. So this is an introduction. It is an inverted, it is like a panel from general to specific. So it will answer series of questions like what is the problem? Are there any existing solutions? Which one is the best? And then what is its main limitations and what do you hope to achieve? Again, from general to specific. So these are some, again, some answers. These are some of the questions that need answers in that you should articulate in your introduction. What is the problem? What are the existing solution? Which is the best solution in that certain problem that you are at hand? And then what are the main limitations of the solutions that has been done? And what do you hope to achieve in order to solve that problem, considering that there are already existing solutions but you are making new solutions, so you are going to articulate that. In the introduction, we need to pay attention to the following before you present your new data. Put them into perspective first. Be brief. It is not a history lesson. So when we are making an introduction, we don't have the luxury to put everything in our introduction. So do not mix your introduction with your result, discussion, conclusion. So it should be very separate. And then do not overuse some expressions such as novel, first time, first ever, or paradigm shift, and others. And of course, as what I have said, this is not a history lesson, so therefore, we need to cite only relevant references. Otherwise, if your paper is not citing relevant references, the editor and the reviewer may think you don't have a clue what you are writing about. So this is the rule of thumb that I am telling to my students, particularly in my undergraduate students, because they are submitting their paper in a journal, particularly ISI and Scopus Index Journal. And I'm happy that usually 100% of our students' uh, thesis were accepted in an ISI and Scopus Index Journal publication. So in my class, I always say to my students, this is the first thing that you're going to do in writing your introduction. The first paragraph. Tell me directly what's the problem you want to solve. So do not tell me whatever, but tell me directly what's the problem you want to solve. So I tell to my students that you cannot say that there is problem on the, or you can say that water is the lifeblood of the earth, but this is very general, but if you can say there is a problem in wastewater treatment facility, particularly in the some contamination with pharmaceuticals, then tell me directly about that. I don't want very broad uh, discussion in the first paragraph, but it should be very specific to the problem that you want to solve. So I also told to my students that you need to do align your thoughts to the title of the paper. If the main point of your title is efficiency, then tell me in the first paragraph inefficiency problems needing solution. If it's about development, then tell me about some problems of the development of that certain new product. And of course, I am always telling to my students that tell me exact numbers of the problem that you want to solve, not general statement. For example, it is not good to say that the XYZ river is extremely populated with mercury. I cannot accept that as a good sentence in introduction. But if my student would say the XYZ river is polluted with mercury at 1,000 parts per million, then that is good. And of course, at the end of this, because there is a number, there is a reference as to who says that it's 1,000 part per million. The second paragraph will tell, the second paragraph of the introduction should tell existing solutions made by others of the current problem. So I'm telling to my students, if this is the problem, then what others are doing. Tell me, this person is doing this, and this is the result. This person is doing this, and this result. So, what other works have found? Uh, the second paragraph should tell important findings of the existing solutions that has been made out of the problem that you want also to give solutions. So again, as much as possible, I am asking, or in the second paragraph, there should be exact values that a certain article should present, so that we can really say that there are solutions already, and these are what has been found in that certain study that has been conducted. The third paragraph, in writing an introduction, as a rule of thumb to my students, I said to them that the third paragraph should tell me limitations and knowledge gap of what has been done. Meaning to say, if these things has already been done by some researcher, what has not been done? And then, because if these things are not being done, then that is already a knowledge gap, wherein you can then start making some research out of that knowledge gap. So the third paragraph should articulate a clue that will lead or give ideas as to what a certain researcher will do in that certain research, or what the researcher has been done, if that's already a conducted research, in the in that certain introduction. It will give a clue as to what is being done by the researcher. And the fourth paragraph is about telling the reader what you're going to do to address the limitation or the knowledge gap. It should articulate the objective of the current work and a general description of how a certain researcher will do it in order to solve that certain problem. There's a note that I really put in here. It is not necessary that introductions shall exactly have four paragraphs only. You may have more than four paragraphs, but the sequence of the presentation is suggested to be of that order. That is because if you have that four sequence of what should be written, the first, second, third, and fourth paragraph, then you can tell a story. So this is only a rule of thumb that I am telling to my students, especially that they are undergraduate students. And then we have writing and sound materials and methods. Because after introduction in publishing a paper, the next section is the materials and methods. So sound materials and method. The first one is we need to provide enough details so readers can understand and replicate our work as much as possible. If you are a reviewer or people who are reviewing our paper per publication, I would really look at the replicability of our work. If our work will be read by others, then can they do it also at their own? If that is not being established, then the reviewer might reject your paper because there is no way that it can be replicated by some other researchers in the future. And it should explain how you studied the problem. You need to identify the procedures that you follow in conducting your study. If there are new methodology, then you need to put details of the methodology that you are doing. Otherwise, the name otherwise name or cite the method that is previously published if you are using some methods that are already published somewhere else. So example of articulating the method and citing the previously published work. I have here a title of a study of my friend about application of central composite design in the optimization of lipid yield from microalgae. Then it is being highlighted here. What is being highlighted here is that The samples were oven dried at 105 degrees Celsius for 24 hours, and then there's an open and close parenthesis 21. That is previously published work wherein it says that it should be oven dried at 105 degrees Celsius for 24 hours. Another example is the same about previously published work, but in this case, the author of this paper is self-citing his work. It is because the second work is a continuation of the first publication that he did. So that is why he is the first author of the title in up about upgrading of the syndesmos obliquus oil, and the same time in the materials and method, he's citing his own paper because again, this is the continuation of the paper or of the work wherein the first part of the work is republished and the second part is this paper. That's why he is citing his own paper. This is another one, uh, articulating the method and citing the previously published work. So if there are some procedures that are based on the previously published work elsewhere, then you can cite that certain author of that certain paper. Of course, in the sound materials and method, you need to include the frequency of observations and the type or types of data that were recorded. It's also very good to be precise in describing the measurement and to include errors of measurement or the research design limits. And of course, identify the equipment and materials that were used. So, for example, in identifying the equipment and materials that are being used, so you need to, what is being highlighted here is laboratory mill, and then you put the model for Wiley mill, Thomas Scientific, because this is the one that producing this certain equipment, and then it is being sieved in a certain brass test sieve, and then there is also a certain company and the country where it is being produced. Okay, so as that is one of the requirements if we will be writing materials and methods, so that we will know if the equipment that are being used by the researcher is acceptable or like in terms of standard, is it good or not. And then we need to use proper notations including chemical formulas and symbols. So if it's nickel, if it is uh, if there are some chemical compounds, then we need to write it correctly. And also present, we need to present the control that is being used by the study if there is any. No? So we need to write that in our materials and methods. Also, it is very important that we need to give or write the vendor's name and address of the equipment. So you have already noticed there that there are some like USA. So for example, Fourier transform infrared analyzer, and then it's being highlighted there that it is being the FDAR is owned or produced by Shimadzu Incorporated, particularly from Houston, Texas, USA. Also, all chemicals must be identified, like the purity and the supplier. Like what is being highlighted here as an example is that the N-hexane, and then we put open and close parentheses, that is 97% from hypersol, and then isopropyl is 99.5% in terms of purity, and purchased by from where? So that is from VWR International. So that's how we are going to put chemicals, particularly in terms of purity and the supplier. Of course, in the materials and method, we need to write it in past tense. So it's a no-no when a reviewer like me will be reading your manuscript and then it is not written in the past tense. and it is very clear, and it is very clear that these things are being done in the laboratory. So as much as possible, we should also observe this, because this is very important. And then, of course, we need to read and follow other instructions from the guide or instruction for authors of the chosen journal. If you choose already the journal that you wish to publish your paper, then read the guides for authors, because this is where you will know what this certain journal is asking from you when you submit your paper. So each journal has its own guide for authors. So therefore, what is true to one journal is not true to the other journal. In terms of formatting, in terms of other requirements aside from the manuscript, each of the journal has its own guide for authors for you to be acquainted and for you to prepare what you are going to have before you start the submission in the journal. Next is writing the result of your paper. So when you have already conducted your activity in the laboratory, and then you will be writing the results and discussion. So there are two ways wherein we can write. It can be results and discussion. There are journals wherein the results and discussion are in one section, and there are also journals wherein results is one section, and then at the bottom after the results the discussion will follow. But most of the journals, the one where I submitted my uh, my papers, are usually results and discussion are one section. So when we write a result is just the data that we have like analyzed and processed in the laboratory. So it's about the main findings. So you need to decide what are the data that you are going to share and not to share. So it should be the finding from the experiment described in the methods section. So highlight the findings that differ from findings in previous publications and the unexpected findings, because these are important. Of course, results is about the result of the statistical analysis that you are employing in your data. So the results are usually being presented either by a figure or a table. So when you have this illustration of a picture or a table, make sure that it really illustrates as to what are the data that you have gathered in the laboratories or in the lab. So figures and tables are the most efficient way to present the results. So results are the driving force of publication, because this is where a certain person will look into if he wanted to know what you have found in your work. So figures and tables should not need further explanation or description in the text. In my case, when I look at the paper for review, for example, in some ISI and Scopus Index journal that are sent in my email for review, I usually look at the figures and tables first, and then after looking at that, I have already an idea as to what the study is all about. And that's the time that I need to read an abstract, a conclusion, and then I have already some ideas as to what the study is all about. It says that one picture is worth 1,000 words, and so therefore, in making a result, we see to it that the figures and the tables are really very presentable, and it stand alone. That by just looking at it, we can understand what it is all about. So it's about visualization. So the caption and the legend should be self-explanatory to enable the figure to stand alone. So this is the one that I am talking. So we need to maximize the visual versus the space. So the graph should be uncrowded. So it should have the X and Y axis label. And then the font size should be not too small and not too big. But if your paper is using a font size of 12, then as much as possible, your figure is also like font size of 12 when it is being put into the manuscript. So there are some example of this one. So it should contain, the tables and the figure should contain sufficient explanatory details to make the figure understood easily without referring to the text. This is what I am talking that when I look at the paper for review in some ISI and Scopus Index journals that requires me or ask me for my free review of these papers. I look at the figures and tables. If I can understand it, then I have an idea that this work is worth like reviewing and worth reading. Uh, so, uh, so in the result, the appearance counts. So 3 or 4 data sets per figure. And then, of course, you need to have a well selected scale. It should have appropriate access label size. As what I've said, if your manuscript has a 12 font size, then use 12 font size. And if you are using Times New Roman, therefore your figure and table should also have a Times New Roman. So each photograph must have a scale marker of professional quality in a corner as much as possible. It should not be in French, German, or Chinese or Korean. As much as possible, it should be in English. And then do not include long and boring tables. There are also some researcher wherein they are presenting the result in a narrative form, and there are a lot of data that are being written in a paragraph or two. So if your data can be written in or can be presented in a table before presenting it in a narrative form or in a text, that is better. So, but if it is like 2 rows only, maybe it is not required. But if that is more than 2 rows in terms of data, it is really required. So if you're going to look at the left side of this PowerPoint slide, you can really see that there are a lot of data that is being presented. And if you're going to read it, this one, you will really be lost as to uh, at a loss as to what are this data is all about. So these are some illustrations. Uh, this is another one that a certain reviewer or a certain researchers should have in mind if they are going to publish their work. That there is no duplication of the information in one article. If you present it in a table, present it in a table and no figure. If you're going to present it in a figure, then present your data in a figure and no table. No duplication that you have a table at the same time for purposes nga for purposes that it will be like more or clearer to the reader, and then you make another presentation, and from the figure you will make a table. So it's a no-no. When you present in table and no figure. If you present in figure and no table of a certain data, no? So this one, the data in the figure is also being presented in a table. So figure and then presented in a table. So it's a no-no in the research article for publication in a journal. So again, the what is being emphasized here is that the graph repeats what the table describes. So also, as what I have said, content in illustrations should be meaningful. So here, if you have noticed, there are a lot of zero that are being presented in the column. So as much as possible, we need to remove all of this because these are not important, because it will make us, if there are a lot of zero, but there is no bearing in a certain column, so it will make our, when we read it, it's a little bit harder to read with all of this zero than having numbers without zero. In presenting a figure, if we are going to look at this one, then we cannot see that there is a trend of the data. We are imagining as to how the triangle looks like if you're going to connect them, how the square looks, how the square the behavior or the data of all the square would look like if you're going to connect them. So therefore, this is a poor figure if you're going to put this in your research manuscript. This is better because the certain legion is being improved. Not all abbreviations or as previously presented. These are all uh, acronyms of the square, the triangle. These are all acronyms. So now it is being articulated as to what are this all about. But meaning to say, we can say that this is a better illustration of the data presented. But this is the best because you are telling the certain reader that this is the behavior of the data that you have derived or you gathered in the laboratory. Excuse me. And then, as much as possible, the table shall have three horizontal lines. So it is not good to see tables having a lot of horizontal and vertical lines. So if you have noticed that the table at the top, the upper portion is already a good table, but with a lot of horizontal and vertical lines. So if you have noticed, when we look at the bottom, it is better because there are only three horizontal lines. So this is a better table presentation compared to having horizontal and vertical lines. And then the common units shall be at the top of each column. If you have noticed that the gravel, for example, in the upper table has all of the data has percentage from the three data in the column has percentage. But at the bottom, the percentage is already put in the gravel and then open and close parenthesis percentage. We need to say the 3.4, the 2.5, and the 0 are all percentages. Okay, so as much as possible, we should see to it that we can have a presentation like this in making the table or figure. Also avoid long and boring tables. So this is an example of a very crowded table. So giving all of these ratios to two significant figures after the decimal points is simply not justified by the accuracy of measurement. So if you have a data sets like this in a research article or in an article that is being published somewhere else, then we cannot understand this table. So as much as possible, we need to avoid long and boring table. So guides for figure and table. So figure title at the bottom, table title at the top, and then introduce each table or figure in a text. So example in the right, it is being highlighted that in the text as it is being said there that experiment are shown in table 1 and then there is table. So it is not good as a writer or a research uh, person that you cannot have text. You cannot mention the table number or the table in the text, but you have the table that you have presented or a figure without mentioning a figure and its number in the text. So the same as here, this is about figure. So it is being said here, shown in figure 3, and then you have figure number 3 as a corresponding figure that you have in your text. So this is very important. That if you have a figure, then it is being called in the text of that certain research article. So it should have the figure the table should have high resolution. It should be legible. That's what I have said. If the font size is 12, then put font size of the text is 12, then you can have your table and your figure have also a font size of 12. And clearly formatted. You indicate some errors or error bars and deviation if you have data because this is very important so that we can understand the how the deviation of your data. So of course you have a detailed caption, particularly in your title. So this is what I am talking about, showing the error or deviation in your data. So in this certain in this certain graph that we can see at the left side, there is like an eye that is being presented in each of the bar graph, and that is called as error bars. And on the right is the table, and then there is a plus and minus in the data, and that can be standard error or standard deviation. In this case, this is standard deviation. So if I am reviewing a paper, as much as possible, I am looking into that the data has standard error or standard deviation. As much as possible, we need to be consistent in the use of our ISI units. As much as possible, it should be correct. So there are a lot of mistakes that I can find in many research articles that are submitted for me to review, like the kilograms is kgs, the hours is abbreviated as HRS, and so on and so forth. So as much as possible, we should be very careful on abbreviating, particularly the SI unit. Of course, we need to be consistent in terms of our abbreviation. If we are using H for an hour, then H for the whole manuscript. And it is not also good that you are using H in some of to represent an hour in some of your paper, but the minutes are being spelled out as minutes. So if you are using some abbreviation, then use abbreviations in in parts of your paper. You need to check also the numerical presentation as much as possible. In many of the journals, it is being said that the numerical value and the unit are being separated by a space. That exclude percentage, because if you said 100%, then there is no space. But most of the numerical presentation, it should be separated by a space. So 50 cm should be written as 50 space cm, or 10 kilograms should be written as 10 space kg. That is the general rule. Common mistakes: raw data is being presented, no standard deviation, no standard error, sometimes boring error is being presented. Also, I have noticed in many of the research article that I read and I reviewed, that the graph and the table have the same data. And of course, so per mix, result, and discussion. The discussion and interpretation of the data are mixed with the result. So, yeah, as much as possible, we should first have the result and then the discussion. Not result, discussion in one paragraph. Another common mistakes is no figure or table. So there are data that are being presented with a lot of values but without figure or a table. So it's a no-no also if we have a lot of data and then you are not presenting it in a figure or a table. Or it might be that there is no method or material reported in the methodology section but with results that are being presented. This is also true, particularly if a paper is being taken from a big research like a dissertation or a project, and then sometimes when a certain researcher make an article for publication, in the methodology it is not being stated, but there are a lot of results that can be found in the results and discussion. Next is writing a discussion. Again, the results is only about presentation of the figure and presentation of the table, and then putting in a text what you can see in the table or in the figure. The discussion is about what our result or the meaning of the results of our investigative work. So it is the most important section of the article, because if your article lacks discussion, therefore that certain research manuscript or that certain article is weak, and most probably most of the reviewer will reject if the discussion is weak. Okay, so do not make statements that go beyond what the result can support, or do not suddenly introduce new terms or ideas in the discussion. Usually, a discussion, you need to present the result followed by discussion. In my with my students, I really say that you have one paragraph for the result, and then after one paragraph for the result, talking about a certain figure or a table, and then the next paragraph should interpret what that result is or about. So result one paragraph, and then discussion the next paragraph, and then you are talking in the same table or the same figure for at least two paragraphs, one paragraph for the result and one paragraph for the discussion. So again, keep separate from data, clearly distinguished by a paragraph, as what I have said, section, and or like if it is already or if it is presented in the same paragraph, then there is a word like are interpreted to show, meaning to say that is the start that you are making some discussion. You can subdivide your interpretation when necessary, particularly if it is about social sciences studies from local or small scale to regional and to international. Again, the discussion is the most important section of your study. So make the discussion correspond to the result, and you need to complement them, and then compare published results with your own. So be careful not to use statements that go beyond what the results can support. Non-specific expressions, new terms not already defined or mentioned in your paper, or some speculations. It is not good to have some speculations or interpretations that are based only on your imaginations. So this is the rule of thumb that I am telling to my students in my undergraduate. The first paragraph in the result in each table or in each figure. So first paragraph, if they present a certain table or figure, the first paragraph is tell me what can be found in each table or figure that you have presented. You may highlight extreme values, but never forget to mention, and also never forget to mention the table or figure in the text. So you need to call that this is about table 1, this is about figure 1. Again, that is how I told my students that if you're presenting a table or a figure, the first paragraph should tell me about the result, what can be found in that certain table or figure. So example of this, uh, by the way, we need to avoid a sentence just to introduce a table or a figure, because in research article, as much as possible, we need to minimize writing unnecessary sentences. So two sentences can be stated in one sentence. Here is an example. These are two sentences saying figure 2 shows the yield of immunity seeds via UASA at variable extraction. As shown in the table, the highest peak is 42.4% at 25 minutes. We can simply say that the oil yield from immunity seeds via UASA at the variable extraction time is highest at 25 minutes with 42.4%. Open and close parentheses, figure 2. So I also told my students, and of course you, especially those researchers who are publishing or starting to publish their paper, we can also have this, that as much as possible we will avoid introducing our figure or table in one sentence or two, because you can simply put it in an open and close parenthesis. The second paragraph of the result and discussion should discuss or interpret the result. As what I've emphasized, if there is a table or figure that are presented by my students in their article, the first paragraph should discuss about the result. The second paragraph should write about the result. The second paragraph should discuss or interpret what the result or what is that table or figure is all about. So qualitatively, is your findings similar or in contrast to other previous works? So I always told to my students, you need to tell me similarities or differences of the data, higher or lower than the previous work. Therefore, they can really say that this data is higher than what has been found by De La Cruz, and then they told, and then after that they are going to uh, tell the reason why it is higher or lower than what is being found by previous work. I always say why, and why the result is like that. As a researcher, we need to cite reasons of other works why the trend or outcome is behaving as such. So that is what the second paragraph in each table or figure uh, is what the second paragraph should contain if there is a table or a figure that is being presented. So if only one paragraph for result and discussion, because there are instances that are very limited words we can put in the result. So if only one paragraph for results and discussion of a figure table, uh, we need to see to it that we can distinguish the start of a discussion, like using the word are interpreted, the result implied that, and others. So then we can say that the result is represented, and this is the start of the discussion and interpretation because there are words like are interpreted, the result implied, and all. So remember that discussion articulates the reasons or the meanings of the data that are being presented in a table or a figure. Next is writing a conclusion. So after you have results and discussion, then you can write your conclusion. Again, this is also a major part of a research article because a conclusion is a section of a research article for submission in the journal. So it will explain how your work advances the present state of knowledge. It is as much as possible, do not repeat what you are saying in your result and what you are talking in your abstract. We need to be clear that what we are writing in our conclusion is what we have found in the research work that we are doing and what are the new body of knowledge that uh, we can contribute to our own field. So, how the work advances the field from the present state of knowledge. It should have a clear conclusion section that will help reviewers to judge your work easily. So what you are going to do, present global and specific conclusion in relations to the objectives. Indicate what are the uses of your outcome of your research. It can be extensions and the limitations if it is appropriate. Of course, suggestion of future experiments if there's something to be done that is not yet done of your work, so that other researchers can also work on things that are not under the scope or within the scope of your study. So do not summarize your paper because the abstract is the one that summarizes what the paper is all about. So do not also make a list of trivial statement of your result or make judgment about the impact of your result. It's a no-no that you can really say that this contribute to the increase of whatsoever in the world, whatsoever, or this can help in the attaining sustainable development goals because these are very broad things. So we should be very specific as to what are our contributions, particularly when we have already the conclusion of our work. So it's about summary of contribution and future researches. So again, after Reaching conclusion, then we can write the abstract. The abstract is can be found at the first page usually of your research article, but usually this is being written last. This is about the summary of the content of the research. It's about it is brief but contains sufficient details, particularly on the motivation for the work, the project objectives, the techniques or the methods that are being employed, and then the major results, the discussion, and the conclusion of your work. So you need to follow the structure of your paper. Usually it's about IMRAD, and then you need to summarize the background, the motivation, the methods, the result, the conclusion, and the impact of the aim. So this is the summary of the manuscript or the article, usually 50 to 250 words, or dependent on the journal as articulated in the guide to authors. There are journals saying only 100 words in the abstract. Other journals says 150 words. You need to select which of the data you are going to present and how you are going to uh, minimize the number of words in your abstract. Again, what to write about the problem or the motivation, the purpose of your work, the methods, the result, and the conclusion. This is the rules in the making of the abstract. So, as much as possible, it should be brief. And this is a rule. Follow the rule of 10. So this is also what I'm telling to my students. Follow the rule of 10. 1 to 2 sentences telling about the aim of your work. And then 2 to 3 sentences about the materials and methods. 2 to 3 sentences about the results. And 2 sentences about discussion and conclusion. If you can follow this rule of 10, then you can have a very good abstract in your study. So tell the readers what you did and the important findings. Remember that the abstract is the advertisement for your article, because this can be seen when somebody will be searching in the internet. If it is uh, published in a journal that is for subscription, only your abstract can be read by the researchers or those who are looking in the internet. So be accurate and specific. A clear abstract will strongly influence if your work is considered further. Okay, so the abstract should precisely reflect the content of a paper. This is an example for what and how. So and then what was being found. Again, if you can follow the rule of 10, then you can have a very good abstract. This is not a very good abstract because it is too detailed. There are a lot of things that are being said in here. Therefore, a certain reader cannot understand what you are talking about if you have an abstract like this. They're also unspecific or uninformative in new ways. For example, you can specify what are these new ways. Very small, you can write a number, how small or how big is the value, or various temperature. You can write what is the temperature. So common mistakes in the abstract: too much background or method information with figures or images that are being presented, with references of other literature, because as much as possible, abstract is a standalone. It is about the work that you are doing, the summary of the work that you are doing. Therefore, there is no reference that should be found in abstract as much as possible. Or there are unknown acronyms that are presented in the abstract. Those are some common mistakes I found when I review some abstracts. The use of abbreviation is not correct. That's what I've said. Kilograms should be written as kg and not kgs, or hours should be written as H and not HRS, and others. And the numerical value don't have a space before the unit, with some exemption like angle or percentage. So example are centimeter, kilograms, and all. And then if you are going to have a comparison between the abstract and the conclusion, the abstract is a brief summary of each of the main parts of the article: introduction, methods, result, and discussion, and even the conclusion. But the conclusion is what is achieved based on the objective. What are the answers to the knowledge gap that you have presented in the introduction? So the abstract's about short story about what is in it, no matter how good or bad valuables or scrap. But the conclusion is the statement about the findings justified by the detailed content. It will spell out contribution. The abstracts about what is done by the researcher in the given paper. That conclusion is what is accomplished in the paper under consideration. In other way of saying it, the abstract is like a movie trailer, but the conclusion is about the objective of the movie in light of the evidence and arguments given in the certain movie. So a statement, the conclusion is about statement of decision reached based on findings. One who reads the results and discussion can make a conclusion. It does not make sense to write a conclusion like we have shown this and that by using this and that method. One just read the results and discussion and abstract. Again, the conclusion should always be about what you have found and what are your novel contribution to that certain problem under investigation. And of course, if you're writing a paper, you need to have some acknowledgement. You need to acknowledge your advisors, financial supporters and funders, proofreaders and typists, for example, suppliers whom you have donated materials. You need to acknowledge those people. And then referencing. Give just 2 to 3 pertinent references in a proper context. As much as possible, do not lump one all the references without specifying as to where the certain people have contributed in terms of the method, for example. So these are example that instead of putting 4-8 in as a reference, then you can specify as to what method uh, they are doing in their research work that are published in the journal, reputable journal. So this after that, you have already all the parts or section of your paper. Then you can do some formatting and packaging. If you have already your title, you have your keywords, you have your abstract, your introduction, materials and methods, results and discussion, conclusion, some reference list, and then acknowledgement there any, then you can have guides. Then this is now formatting and packaging. So rule of thumb, read carefully the guides or instructions for authors. In each journal, as what I said, there are guides or instruction for the authors so that we will know, or you as author will know, what you are going to prepare and how you are going to prepare all of the needed files that you need to attach or submit once you start the submission of your article in a certain journal. So sequence of article parts, I have already discussed this one, that there should have a title, author affiliation, corresponding author, keywords, abstract, introduction, up to references. So these are example. In submitting a manuscript, usually it is being submitted in a Microsoft Word, and this is usually how it looks like. So of course, there's a title at the top, and then authors are the are being presented after the title, and then author affiliation that includes the college where that certain author is affiliated, the university if it's a university, the municipality, the country, and the zip code. And then after that, you also need to specify who is the corresponding author. This corresponding author is the author wherein the publisher or the journal can send the updates of your paper once you submit your paper in that journal. You need to insert line numbers, because these are the reference of the reviewer. Once they will be reviewing your paper, then they can just simply say, in page 1 line 18, what's wrong in that certain line. That's the reference, so you need to put some line numbers. Of course, you need to put superscript in the author. If you have noticed, there is A, B, C, D there, so that when you put author's affiliation, you can simply have this certain superscript, and then add asterisk for corresponding author. So corresponding author, again, this is a person who will submit and receive emails of the status of the paper. Of course, this is how abstract should look like. After the this first page, this one, then it should start with the abstract. This is the abstract. It should be one paragraph only. And then after the abstract, you have a keyword. Again, this is in the Microsoft Word, because most of the paper, when you submit paper, it should be written in the Microsoft Word or LaTeX. So this is the keywords, and then this is an introduction after the keywords. These are the materials or materials and method, or the experimental section of your paper. The third one, or number 3 section, is about results and discussion. You can use subsections such as 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and others. If you are making a table, so table entry or row is usually single space. Most of the guide to authors or instruction to authors table should be single space, and the title should be written at the top. So if you have figures, so the figures should have complete X and Y axis title with units if possible. So in this case, the X axis title is with numbers, with units, and then the Y axis is absorbance, also with units. And then, as much as possible, no inside title within the figure, because you already have the title of the figure at the bottom, so no inside title within the figure. What I'm saying inside title is like this: uh, NPK uptake of tomato, and then you have the title figure 2 NPK uptake of tomato, so it's already redundant. So again, there is no inside title should be omitted in a figure because it is not needed. I've seen this in many of the studies that are given to me for review. So again, no inside title within the figure. Of course, you will have conclusions, and then you have acknowledgement. So acknowledgement of a sentence or two. Conflict of interest, because some papers or some journals really say that you need to also articulate if there is conflict of interest. So you need to put that in your manuscript, or some of the papers or journals they say that you need to have a separate file for conflict of interest. You need to know if it should be put in an article, or it should be separated with a separate file name, and then the references. So declare conflict of interest if it is required. And then after that, when you submit, after submitting your paper, then that's a time that you are going to handle correspondence. Email the reviewer or the editor will email you of the result, whether your paper is accepted, rejected, minor revision, or major revision, or what are lacking in your paper, and then that's correspondence. So getting your paper back, usually rejected without review from the reviewer alone, then the reviewer can only say that this paper is not good. Approximately 35% of papers are rejected at the table. And then it might be very slim chance that once you submit your paper, it will be accepted right there and then at first submission. Also very um, slim chance that you can have minor revisions. Most usually is major revision or revise and resubmit or reject after review. I have there are some papers I review that is already like uh, resubmitted 5 times, meaning to say revised 5 times, and then when it go into my email, I look at it and then I found out that this paper is not good for acceptance because there are some data that are suspicious. Then I'll say that this can be rejected, and even if it's already revised 5 times, there is no assurance that it will be accepted because there might be instances that your paper really needs some reviewer to really say that this is not acceptable because there are suspicious methods or data presented. So minor revision, this is what minor revision is all about. Uh, but again, if it is minor revision, it does not guarantee acceptance after revision. It might be that after you revise, even though it's minor, then the editor or the reviewer can then reject your paper because they have found out that it is not good for publication. Major revision, the manuscript may be worth to be published, but there are significant deficiencies that must be corrected before acceptance, so you need to have major revision. Again, the same, there is no guarantee that if you submit a paper, a revised paper with major revision, that is being given by the editor or reviewer, there is no guarantee that that paper will be accepted. It might be that after submitting your revised manuscript, it can not be accepted but rejected. Of course, you need to respond to the reviewer's comments. If the reviewer says that this is wrong, then how you are going to respond? Something like this one. Reviewers comment, the method, device, paradigm the authors propose is clearly wrong. That is how cruel sometimes the reviewers are. Then, how not to respond? Do not say that, yes, we know. We thought we could still get a paper out of it. Sorry. So, that is not a good answer. Or the reviewer will say, the authors failed to reference the work of Smith et al., who solved the same problem 20 years ago. Then do not reply with this, huh? We didn't think anybody had read that. Actually, their solution is better than ours. So because if you are having that certain reply or respond to the comments of the reviewer, then that is not good. No, each of the reviewers' comment should have an answer from your end once you revise your manuscript. So correct response might be something like this. The reviewer raises an interesting concern. However, as the focus of this work is exploratory, not performance-based, validation was not found to be of critical importance to the contribution of the paper. Okay? Or correct response might be in the second reviewer comment, the reviewer raises an interesting concern. However, our work is based on completely different first principles, and then we use different variable names and has a much more attractive graphical user interface, and so on and so forth. If you have this kind response, then there might be a chance that your paper will be published. I have an example also like this. This is from our publication wherein it is revised, and this is how we respond to the editor. No? So you make a reply to the editor, to editors or editor, and reviewers comment as one file in MS Word. No? So something like this. This is one file wherein we put the title of our paper, and then the journal where we submitted our paper, and then we write the editor, and we also discuss what our response to each of the comment. No? So, for example, please delete outside box and provide a vertical line for the beginning of x-axis. So, our reply, the authors understand the need to delete the outside box. Thus, we have deleted it already. Okay, so something like that. In the response to the comments of the reviewers or editors. In revised manuscript, in a revised manuscript, highlight your corrections in red or blue font, or red guides for authors if it's a red or a blue. So, for example, something like this. So there are already sentences with red font. So these are already revisions from the original paper that has been submitted. So meaning to say, in the response to authors, then you can say that in line 104 to 107, we revise the ultrasonication process description, and that can be seen in line 104 to 107. So make a revised manuscript again in MS Word. Usually, if it's a revised manuscript, the file name that we usually put is revised manuscript. And then you make a cover letter. So something like this, because some of the journals really look for a file name for a cover letter. So and sometimes it is mandatory, so you make your own cover letter. So we have also some example of our cover letter that we submitted to the journal when we start the submission of our articles. Submission checklist, rule of thumb again, read carefully the guide for authors, because not only the manuscript that you're going to submit, but there are some others that you need to submit when you go through the process of the submission of your paper. This is the manuscript, as what I said a while ago. In the previous slides, there are 12 to 13 sections in the manuscript: the title, the author affiliation, the introduction, the materials and methods, and all. And then again, as what I've said, you need to prepare cover letter, especially if it is mandatory of the journal that you're going to submit. Author's name and email addresses, suggested reviewer. You need to look for reviewers. You need to suggest who will review your paper. So do not suggest your friend or somebody in the country if you are submitting in the ISI or Scopus Index Journal. You need to suggest reviewers that are expert in the field as much as possible, not in our country. Other files, highlights, statement of novelty, graphical abstract, and conflict of interest. What are these? So going forward, the sequence of the article parts, as what I've said, this one, until references. This is the manuscript, what contains the manuscript. And then if it is a doable blind review, so the first page should only have the title up to the corresponding author, composes the title page, and then the manuscript will be separate with no name of the authors. Because if your journal will say this is a double blind review, then they will be asking the title page and the manuscript. So this is the title page and the manuscript. So this is how it looks like. Tables and figures. There are some journals saying that you need to separate or submit table separately and figures separately. So do as being instructed in the guides to authors. You need to complete, if it says that the table and figure should have complete caption, meaning to say that the title of the figure or table is understood by somebody who will be looking at it. It can stand alone by just looking at the table or figure with its title, then it can be understood by someone looking at it. So one table or figure in each page, if it is separated in different file, in this Word file, then if you have 5 tables, then it should be 5 pages ang image the image word containing all the tables. If you have 10 figures, then 10 pages image word file for all the figures. Again, one page per table or figure. This is a cover letter example. I have represented this. Author's name and email addresses. So author shall be arranged according to contribution of the work. Make sure that all names are correctly spelled out. No ghost authorship and no gift authorship. When I said gift authorship, do not write the name of your friend in that certain journal because you are friends even if that person does not help in the making of that certain paper from conceptualization up to interpretation and revising of the paper. Or ghost authorship, somebody is working with you with that paper but you did not put his or her name, so that is ghost authorship. So do not do or please avoid guest gift authorship and ghost authorship. And then of course use decent email addresses. So these are some example. When I was in my PhD, I have this very not advisable email address, and then my advisor says, please make a decent email address because this is already publishing and academic communities will be looking at your work. Suggested reviewers, identify and find info of suggested reviewers. You need to know the complete name, the affiliation, the email addresses, and the reason for choosing him or her. In my case, I usually pick up from my reference list. So, if possible, pick the corresponding author in the reference list with publication in a journal you intend to submit your work. If the journal is about environmental engineering and then there's somebody in your reference list who published in environmental engineering, then that is a very good pick that you can like suggest as reviewer of your paper as long as that person the study of that person is very related to your work. So the corresponding author has info in the paper, particularly in the paper that are published in ISI and Scopus Index Journal. So you need to find it in that certain paper. Science Direct, for example, Springer, you can find the complete name, the affiliation, the email address, the reason of the email address of the corresponding author. So that's how I did it when I am asked of reviewers or suggested reviewers of my paper for that I submitted in a certain journal. Highlights. Highlights are a short collection of bullet points that convey the core findings of the article, submitted in a separate editable file, usually with the file name highlights, usually 3 to 5 bullet points. So maximum of 85 characters, including spaces per bullet point. Very short collection of bullet points. Example, something like this. One line highlights of the major findings of your work. Statement of novelty, usually 100 words. You need to explain why the work should be published. If it is asked in a separate document, then you can have file name of statement of novelty. So when preparing the statement, do address the significance and novelty of the work and why the work should be considered. Paper that lack significant novelty usually are being rejected, particularly if that certain journal is asking for a statement of novelty. So these are examples of the statement of novelty of a paper. Graphical abstract, some journal also is asking for a graphical abstract of your paper. So this is about images that clearly represents the work described in the article. So graphical abstract should be submitted usually as a separate file. Usually the file name is graphical abstract. And the guide to authors usually give you the image size of the graphical abstract that you're going to submit. These are examples of the graphical abstract. The work of Hua Ai. So this is the graphical abstract. that is submitted in the advanced drug delivery reviews. In the latest paper that I have submitted, uh, this is also the graphical abstract that is being made by the authors, particularly with my co-authors. So we are presenting here that the sewage sludge can be processed and it will be converted into biodiesel. So conflict of interest, these are example of how you are going to say conflict of interest in terms of funding, in terms of if there are grants that are being received by the authors. If there is no conflict exists, then you can then say that the authors declare that they have no conflict of interest. Author's declaration, it might also that the journal will say that you need to really write about conflict of interest in like a formal letter. So you are going to have something like this. Other considerations, one author has been designated as corresponding author with contact details, the email address, and the postal address. Of course, your manuscript should include all of this, keywords, figures, tables, uh, graphical abstract if it is required, highlight files if it is required, or some are asking supplemental files. It is also very important that you need to spell check and grammar check your manuscript. It is not good for reviewers to read your papers that are having misspelled words. The grammar is not good. The order representation is not that good. So as much as possible, you need to be very careful in this. All references mentioned in the reference list should be cited in the text and vice versa. If there are copyrighted materials that are being used, the permission should be obtained first before using that certain copyrighted material. So, in closing, I can say that those are the things that I can share to you in terms of research publication in ISI and Scopus Index Journal. I hope you have a takeaway of what I have presented. As what I have said, those are the things that I have discussed to my students in my undergraduate subject, particularly in thesis, and I am proud that my students had really published their paper in ISI and Scopus Index Journal with citations in just a month or two after publication. So you are on your way of publishing an award-winning journal article. I have been to PUP and discussing on things like this on publication 101, on how to write a paper to be published, and on what are the uh, things that can aid in publishing, like the use of Mendeley. Maybe we can also discuss about how we can use Grammarly, how we can use Killbot, how we can use some other materials that can be used uh, in publishing journal article. Uh, to PUP key officials and top management, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity that you have given me this avenue for me to uh, give some insights on how to publish a journal article. With that, I would say God bless to all. If you have some questions related to this presentation that I have, I am very willing to answer your questions. Again, thank you very much. And I would like to say a disclaimer statement that all informations and content in the slides are provided solely for general information and reference purposes. The speaker does not claim ownership of all the materials herein, though I put some sources, some of which are snipped from reliable sources. But the sources are being acknowledged in each of the uh, slide that I have presented. These are some of the references that I use when I made the slides that I have presented to you this afternoon. With that again, thank you very much, and once again, a happy good afternoon to one and all.